Did you run?
We're joking.
Did you run?
Afternoon, everybody.
Welcome to the Pentagon. First off, I want to update you on the Secretary's schedule for this week. On Wednesday, as some of you know already, Secretary Carter will travel to St. Louis, Missouri to highlight multiple ways the Department of Defense is working with the private sector on advanced technologies that will help the U.S. military maintain its technological superiority well into the future. Secretary Carter will first pay a visit to Boeing's operations in St. Louis to meet with leadership, tour facilities, and thank employees there for their contribution, important contribution, to the nation's security. Secretary Carter will also make remarks to employees while he is there at Boeing. And from that visit, Secretary Carter will deliver remarks to kick off the Wait What? 3-day Future Technology Forum organized by DARPA. This forum is a first-of-its-kind outreach event bringing together 1,200 scientists, engineers, and innovators from across the country to generate new ideas, foster collaboration with the Department of Defense. Secretary Carter will have lunch with some of DARPA's rising stars. He will deliver a speech at the conference, and he will also spend some time seeing firsthand some of the new technologies DARPA is developing, and he'll be meeting with some of the folks behind those technologies while he is there. And with that, happy to open up to questions. Lita?
Peter, can you give us at least an update on the Syrian train and equip from your vantage point? It's been since the end of July when there were some Syrian fighters who were killed and who fled. And since then, there's been a lot of ongoing discussion about what can be done to bolster them. Where does it stand? Are there plans to do things differently? And can you bring us up to date on the graduation and or movement of more fighters out of the training programs?
Well, let me step back and give you the big picture. The Secretary and this Department of Defense still believe very strongly that supporting moderate Syrian forces is important in this effort. Local forces are going to decide this fight against ISIL in large measure, and that has not changed. The Secretary still believes that it's important to provide support to those moderate Syrian forces. We've seen, and the Secretary's been candid about what happened initially with the train and equip program. We've learned lessons from that, continue to learn lessons from that, and we're going to continue moving forward with that program. Again, considering other ways that we might be able to enhance their effectiveness and enhance the overall effectiveness of the fight against ISIL.
Peter, how many
But
are
do you,
still
I
alive?
mean, can you address the other parts of the question? How many have gone through the training program? Just
I'm not going to give you updated numbers right now as to exactly where that effort stands, but as you know, there have been several thousand that were first brought forward to be vetted for consideration in the program. Again, I'm not going to get into detailed numbers at this point as to exactly where that effort stands, but it has continued since we last discussed it. And again, we're looking at other possible means of expanding and enhancing the fight against ISIL.
But isn't there some sort of time? I mean, isn't there a time consideration here when it literally was the end of July when this happened, and it's
well,
now.
we've said all along we're going to tweak the program, make adjustments as we go. That doesn't suggest anything's really changed. We're moving forward with the program and considering other ways we can enhance our fight against ISIL. Jennifer.
How much of the $500 million that was allocated by Congress has been spent on the 54 who went through the program, and how many of the 54 are still alive?
I'll check on the numbers, the financial numbers. I don't have those handy with me right now, and I don't have an exact breakdown as to the disposition of the 54 at this particular moment in time. I'll try and track that down for you as well. We've been candid that the initial phase of this program did not lift off with the kind of efficiency that we'd hoped. And the Secretary's been candid about that. But he's also been candid that this fight's going to continue, and supporting these moderate Syrian forces is a critical component in the fight going forward.
And if I could just follow up, what is your assessment of what the Russian military is doing on the ground in Syria? And is the Pentagon concerned? We asked about this last week, and you said you welcomed them into the anti-ISIL fight, but it seems that Secretary Kerry was concerned enough this weekend to call his Russian counterpart.
Well, I think what I said was that we welcomed anyone into the anti-ISIL fight. But what we're looking at here, and we're monitoring the situation in Syria, You're aware of the Secretary Kerry's phone call with his counterpart over the weekend. I'll refer you to the State Department for more on that, but the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of State are on the same page with regard to this situation, and we've seen those reports and obviously have some concerns. We're monitoring the situation closely.
What have you seen in terms of what has actually landed in Syria? What led to this concern?
I'm not going to get into intelligence from the microphones here, but we've seen the public reports out there about the Russian military, and we'll leave it at that. But we're monitoring the situation very closely. You can be sure of that.
Can you help us understand what the concern, and you keep saying your concern, what is the concern? What is the concern about what Russia might be up to in Syria?
Well, I mean, as I think Secretary Kerry pointed out, our concern would be any effort to bolster the Assad regime right now would potentially be destabilizing. So that's our primary concern here, that it's not going to bolster the fight against the Islamic State. That's our focus is on fighting ISIL, and we think that further support for the Assad regime could actually be counterproductive.
Well, the Russian Foreign Ministry issued a statement over the weekend, or maybe it was yesterday, I can't recall, essentially expressing surprise considering that Moscow's long-standing policy has been to support the regime of Bashar al-Assad. How is this any different?
Well, we've been pretty clear that the past support for the Assad regime has not been helpful into Syria, and certainly to the current situation in Syria. It's been counterproductive, and we would be concerned by any further support for the Assad regime, whether it be military or otherwise.
Just one last thing. You mentioned that you've seen these reports of Russia bringing stuff into Syria. Can you confirm any of that? Can you give us any sort of idea of what kind of activity that Russia is engaged in that's causing this concern? What are they doing?
I'm not going to get into intelligence from here. I'll urge you to ask the Russians what it is they may be doing with the Syrians. They've talked about their past cooperation with them, but I'm not going to get into what we're seeing specifically from the Department of Defense. Kevin.
Peter, the French are now getting into the fight, apparently, with the ISR and possibly airstrikes into Syria, and it seems to be somewhat tied to, or at least timed to, the refugee crisis. Can you tell me what's the Pentagon's response to the escalation of the crisis? Are there concerns about terrorists mixed in with that flow? That was the French minister's concern. And is that having any effect on U.S. military operations?
I think for everything having to do with the humanitarian side of this, particularly with these flows, I'm going to refer you to the State Department specifically. It's more their lane on this. Obviously, we have concerns about the humanitarian situation. It's a grave situation, what's been happening in Syria. We watch, like everybody else, what's been happening on the shores in parts of Europe, what's happening in Hungary and elsewhere. This is a difficult situation for the Europeans, and basically I'll leave it at that and refer you to the State Department.
But it's a security issue. It's not a diplomatic issue to whether or not there are concerns of terrorist foreign flow reversing with this tide that's going north towards Europe right now.
Yeah. Well, that's
in addition, the second part of the question was, are there any changes to military operations of tasking ships or others to help potentially be ready for crises?
I don't have any specific operational changes to report out to you today with regard to that. With the larger question about foreign fighters, that is been a central concern for us, continues to be a central concern for us. But I'm not going to suggest that these particular migrants that we're seeing right now pose any unique threat. But that is an ongoing concern for us, and it has been for some time.
Peter?
Tom?
We were told earlier this year from the podium that both Saudi Arabia and Qatar would take part in this training effort that the Turks are now doing. Have they started training moderate Syrian rebels, and if not, why not?
Tom, let me circle back with you on exactly the status of their level of support for the program right now. That's best for me
They have agreed to the training, haven't they?
That's my understanding, but let me check back with you at exactly where it stands. I don't want to speak for them, first of all, and in fact, I'm going to suggest that you reach out to them to get a better sense of exactly their level of cooperation. But if there's anything more I can provide for you, I'll track you down. Phil?
Peter, I'd like to ask Tom's question in a slightly different way, please.
Okay. See if I can answer it in a slightly different fashion.
So, this program was originally intended to produce 5,400 of these fighters in the first year. you've described just a moment ago that throughput has been a big issue here. Is it still scaled to deliver people at that level, if in fact you were to get enough of them to come through, or has it already effectively been scaled down to reflect the fact that you've only got a trickle of these guys who are coming through and you had this bad experience that Lita asked you about earlier?
I think it's fair to say, Phil, that as we've looked at this program, it did not launch in the way in which we would have liked. We've taken a good hard look and continue to take a good hard look at exactly where the program stands, whether or not some of those original targets are indeed where we're going to end up here. We haven't said they're not, but every aspect of this program has been evaluated to make sure that it can be even more effective going forward. And as I said, the Secretary's been candid about this. Hard questions are being asked about this program, but we're also moving forward right now and still believe that local fighters on the ground are a critical component, maybe the critical component, in ultimately degrading and defeating ISIL.
One other thing on this, do you plan to train and field another class of these guys under the current structure, or will you wait to field them until you've implemented some of these changes that you've discussed are under review?
The training, as I understand it, has continued. That program is still ongoing, still moving forward. Whether or not there could be new wrinkles in the program, these are some of the questions that are being asked and being evaluated right now. Tony.
Non-trained and equipped question. Can you broadly sketch out the Saudi Arabia arms package that is in the works right now? The one news organization had it at $1 billion last week. Bloomberg reported that the JDAM bombs and paveway weapons are being considered by the Hill, by members of Congress in terms of replenishing the Saudis. Broadly, where does this package stand, and what are the broad outlines of the value of it and the time frame?
Tony, I'm sure you can appreciate that, first of all, we have extensive conversations with the Saudis about our defense relationship. The Secretary just did as we read out his meeting with his counterpart, Saudi counterpart, but we're not going to get into specific foreign military transactions with the Saudis here until things are in fact complete. We have a long-standing defense relationship with the Saudis, a good relationship with the Saudis on that front, but we're not going to talk about future sales to the Saudis, that sort of thing, until they become finalized.
Well, can you tell whether there will be some notifications over the next month?
I can at this point talk to you about future events that may or may not take place. Just to say that we have an ongoing relationship with the Saudis on a whole host of steps to bolster their security, regional security, and we look forward to working with the Saudis moving forward on that front.
A question on technology. He's going to Boeing tomorrow.
Yeah.
Carter is going to Boeing tomorrow. He's done Silicon Valley a couple of weeks ago. This portends a lot of interest here in emerging technologies that could help the Pentagon in the short term or the long term. Mm-hmm. Should people who follow technology and may want to work with the Pentagon interpret his trips to Silicon Valley and to Boeing tomorrow, to DARPA, portending major funding shifts in the 2017 budget in the 6.1 and 6.2 research categories?
They should take it as a sign from this Secretary of Defense and this Department of Defense that we're open for business. And we are eager to do business with any company, any innovators out there who might have technology that could bolster the warfighter, bolster this department going forward. I think one of the ideas that the Secretary has tried to latch onto here, given his own personal experience in some of these issues and in technology in general, is that there are still opportunities as big and as well-equipped as the Department of Defense is, that there's still opportunities for us to grab onto new technology, new ideas that perhaps people hadn't yet considered for the Department of Defense. DARPA is a perfect example of that. His efforts in Silicon Valley are the same. But at the same time, he's visiting Boeing to reinforce that there are existing defense contractors right now who are working on cutting-edge things as well, and they're a critical part of the future going forward as well.
The 2017 budget, from where you sit, is there going to be major increases in the budget in those basic research areas? I'm
not going to get ahead of the FY17 budget process. You'll see those numbers, Tony, when they're out. But, I won't answer that one. Barbara.
On trained and equipped, the Secretary's been very candid about the small numbers and the difficulties. So I want to come back one more time because I'd like to understand why you're not allowed to continue without candor about the numbers. They have been out there. So we know that there's a second class, a second group being trained. Is there a third group even formed yet? What is the level of, what are the number of vetted fighters, people that you actually have that you can put into this program? He's been very candid about it. He's been very specific. So I'd like to try again on that.
Barbara, again, we've been pretty clear about, as you said, the challenges that this program has had initially, and it doesn't make sense for me to disclose right now operational details, not all of which I have, quite honestly, about the disposition of all those forces and the future potential trainees, graduates of this program, other than to tell you that this program is moving forward.
Can you even tell us if a third group of trainees has been formed up yet? Or are you, I'm not asking you for numbers.
Understood.
You've said that there's progress and it keeps moving forward. So we know there was one group that went into the field, a second group being trained. If it's moving forward, is there a third group formed yet? I'm not asking numbers or where they are.
Understood, and I'm not going to tell you if there's a third group that's been formed, other than to tell you that we continue to train moderate Syrian forces.
What is the risk of telling us that whether a third group's been
We don't
formed?
want to disclose operational details about this. We have seen the security risks that these folks are facing, and so that's one of our considerations. And Barbara, when we have more details on exactly the number of graduates, we'll provide that to you as quickly as we can. I don't have that information for you right now.
And I want to go back to what you also said in your last briefing about welcoming anyone who wants to join the anti-ISIS coalition in reference to the Russians. So where does that stand with the Pentagon? Would you still welcome Russian participation if you had a statement from them that it was purely anti-ISIS, but since it's likely it's for them more about fighting the anti-Assad rebels, who you say are so vital to the fight, are you now going to back away from what you said at your last briefing? Do you still welcome Russian participation?
Well, what we have to look at carefully in Syria is the Russian support for the Assad regime, which we have made clear is the issue and the challenge, and why we believe their support for the Assad regime does not help with the counter-ISIL fight. ISIL was in part formed as a result of the Assad regime. So you can't disconnect those two in our view. And their continued support for the Assad regime continues to be a problem for us.
So would you welcome them if they said they were simply anti-terrorism, anti-ISIL, or is the Pentagon's position it doesn't want a Russian military buildup in Syria? Which is it?
You're trying to conflate two different things here. We've got support for the Syrian regime, military support for the Syrian regime, which we don't think is productive to the larger situation, and certainly doesn't help in the anti-ISIL fight. Again,
I'm just confused, I'm sorry. My apologies. What part of Russian participation, to deconflate, what part of Russian participation would be okay with you?
we think the Russian support for the Assad regime risks further escalating the conflict, making the situation worse. That is our concern right now, and we don't see any indication right now that the Russians are ending the support for the Assad regime. So that's the hindrance, if you will, moving forward. And we see if there are further efforts to support the Assad regime from a military standpoint on the part of the Russians, we would again see that with concern.
So if, in fact, you're seeing it as support for the Assad regime, what is the impact on U.S. military operations in the skies over Syria?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, you're suggesting that you know, this ongoing Russian support and the buildup is for Russian support for the Assad regime.
Which we think makes the situation worse and the situation on the ground more complicated.
Sure. So given that that's the starting point of what the Pentagon sees, it's anti-Assad, and there's a clear buildup. It's clear, the evidence is clear. How does that buildup for the Assad regime support impact U.S. military operations in the skies over Syria? What is the impact on your pilots, your aircraft, your ISR operations?
I'm not sure we've seen an impact at this point.
What do you anticipate the impact will be?
We don't know exactly what they're doing. You can ask the Russians as to exactly what their, the reports that we've seen of their increased military presence, what the purpose of that is. We have seen that. We're monitoring the situation closely, but I don't have anything specifically to tell you in terms of what sort of, how it changes the equation for us. We do believe, as Secretary Kerry pointed out, again, I refer you to the State Department, his comments, that this further support, if these reports are accurate, these actions would further escalate the conflict, lead to greater loss of innocent life, increased refugee flows, and risk confrontation with the counter-ISIL coalition operating in Syria. Phil.
Just getting back to the idea of France participating in airstrikes and potentially maybe we've seen some actions by Britain against Islamic State targets. What capabilities are lacking, or what contributions could other allies make to the air campaign in Syria? Where are the gaps now, and what could allies like France contribute?
Well, first of all, we welcome word of the French further participating in Syria. And I think, as we've pointed out, we've notified everyone over the weekend about the Iraqis now flying their first F-16 flights. These are important positive steps forward. They enhance the overall effort against the against ISIL, and so I'm not sure that they address particular deficiencies, but every little bit helps. And certainly we welcome the French decision, and it will only enhance our effectiveness and, again, enhance the overall effort on the part of the coalition.
So there are no areas where there were gaps in ISR in Syria that will be enhanced by French?
It can only help. It can only bolster our assessment of what's happening on the ground. Every set of eyes are important. The more sets of eyes, the better for us. James.
Peter, the United States, as you have explained and others, vetted the several thousand of Syrians who first stepped forward, chose a much smaller number of Syrians after they were carefully vetted, trained them, and fielded them. Given those close connections, does the United States feel a responsibility for the moderate Syrian forces who were captured by Nusra? Does it feel a responsibility to find out where they are, what their status is, perhaps to help free them? Does it feel a responsibility? Well, two questions. Does it feel a responsibility for what happened to them? And now does it feel a responsibility for trying to help them if possible?
First of all, we have been candid about what's happened with this program off the start. We do have concerns about the status of all the trainees who've gone through this program. Worried about their condition, as you can expect, and trying to support them as best we can. This is a difficult situation, and we only have so much control over those forces after they go through the training. So if that answers your question, obviously we do have concerns about the trainees that have gone through this program, what's happened to them, their current situation, and that's going to continue to be a concern for us moving forward.
Beyond having concerns, is the United States actively trying to find out? Does it know where they are? Is it trying to find out where they are? Would it like to help free them?
I think it's safe to say that we are keeping a close eye on our trainees in as best a fashion as possible, and we're going to continue to provide support for those trainees to the extent possible. Nancy.
I'd just like to follow up briefly on some previous questions, if I could. To James's question, is there any evidence of any of those 54 joining Nusra? Has there been any suggestion of it?
As I mentioned before, I don't have a disposition of every single one of the 54, so I don't have an answer for you specifically on that front, and I can't really walk through exactly what's happened to each and every one of them.
But has there been any suggestion thus far, any concern from this building that some of those fighters may have actually joined Nusra?
We have concerns about the disposition of all these individuals, all these trainees. I can't say with specificity where they have each ended up from this podium. We would have concerns if anyone has joined the fight, has joined in collaboration with the Nusra Front, and for understandable reasons. So it would be a concern to us, but I don't have any information to pass along to you here that that's indeed happened.
And then to Barbara's question about the third class, I was wondering if you could at least take the question, because I think the challenge that we're having, as you've said repeatedly from this podium, that there has been progress made, and yet there's no evidence that you're bringing forth with that in terms of what kind of progress and what areas, and so we're kind of having it go on your word. And so I'd like to know if you would just consider taking the question about
Yep.
If there was a third class.
I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Lucas. Peter, is the Assad regime a bigger threat than ISIS in the region?
Our fight right now is against ISIL, and we've been pretty clear about that from the start. And that's why our focus right now is on ISIL and degrading and ultimately defeating them, working with a coalition with many other nations towards that end. And so at this point, that's going to continue to be our focus, is on defeating ISIL.
Some would argue that the Assad regime has killed more people than ISIS, and that is the bigger threat in the region.
We have been quite clear about our concerns about the Assad regime and what it's done, not only recently but over the years. Right now, though, our focus remains here at the Department of Defense on defeating ISIL.
Going back to Russia for a second, is there any red line that if Russia were to cross inside Syria would elicit a Pentagon response?
I'm not going to talk about red lines from this podium. Yes.
With the Syrian training equip, I was wondering if the Pentagon was expecting to get more resources or to redirect more resources to help with what you keep talking about with progress and moving forward with this effort.
Are you talking about financial resources for it? Took a question earlier about the financing for this program before. So we certainly would expect that this is a program that's going to be adequately resourced. It's going to cost money. It's going to take resources to wage this fight against ISIL, and we look forward to working with Congress towards that end.
Any sense of how much that might be? I know we talked about what is already there, but what could be in the future?
Yeah, I don't have a number for you. Yes.
Yeah, just to clarify, were the second-class trainees graduated?
I'm sorry?
In the training equipment program, were the second-class trainees graduated?
Have they graduated yet? The trainees in that program, as I understand it, are still going through the program. So if there's more to update you, I said I would check on if there's a third cohort to talk about. And so we'll check on that and provide answers to you on both.
Yes, for the third class, because it takes 6 to 7 weeks as far as we know, and it started in August. So I'm trying to understand if there is any group that you determined in northern Aleppo that you are coordinating these airstrikes with on the ground. If new Syrian forces were graduated from the second class, this is the group that you're...
I'm not going to talk about operational details from here as to who we're working with specifically in terms of airstrikes and who might be assisting us with those airstrikes.
In Kobani and Hasaka, you're coordinating these attacks with PYD, for example, right?
Again, that's a previous situation. I'm not going to get into those operational details as well. I'm not going to talk about what's happening on the ground right now in terms of who's supporting us.
Another question regarding this PKK attacks in Turkey. According to the press reports, the Turkish jets hit northern Iraq yesterday. I'm wondering if you have coordinated these attacks with the Turks, because we know that over the last 1 month there wasn't any attack in northern Iraq, and it was the first time that Turkish jets hit northern Iraq. Have you coordinated these attacks with the Turks?
I can tell you that we were notified of these airstrikes in advance, but we did not coordinate these attacks with the Turks.
Was it the first time over the last month, this notification?
I'm not aware of a previous notification. I'm not aware. I'd have to look at the calendar. So I can't give you a solid answer on that because I just honestly don't have the calendar in front of me as to the last time we were given the notification. I don't remember if that was been a month or more.
Yeah, last one on Turkey.
Sure.
There are 6 right now U.S. jets in Incirlik. Do you have any plan to increase that number?
We'll let you know. I don't have anything to tell you at this time about increasing the presence of those, increasing the number of fighters operating out of Incirlik at this time. Yes, in the back?
Sure, on Turkey. First of all, yesterday, the PKK terrorists has conducted one of its bloodiest attacks on Turkish security forces, killing 16 soldiers and wounding several others. Do you have any reaction to that?
We strongly condemn the PKK's 2 terrorist attacks since the weekend that claimed the lives of more than 24 Turkish security forces. Extend our condolences to the families of those who lost their lives. We recognize Turkey's right to self-defense. We urge the Turkish government to respond when necessary proportionately. And there's no connection between deeper cooperation against ISIL and Turkey's operations against the PKK.
The other one, the commander of the Sunni volunteer group Hashdi al-Watani in Iraq, Mahmoud Surji, has told some media outlets that the Incirlik Air Base would be used as a command and control center for the Mosul operation in the future. Do you confirm?
Could you ask the question again? I'm sorry, I didn't totally hear it.
One of the commander of a Sunni volunteer group inside Iraq has told some outlets that, according to the plannings, for a future operation on Mosul to retake the city, Incirlik Air Base, the Turkish Incirlik Air Base would be used as a command and control center for the coalition.
I don't have anything on that for you.
Last one, yesterday, there were reports that the United States has requested Athens to stop the Russian aircrafts carrying aid to Syria, and the Greeks have denied the request by the U.S. Do you confirm also these reports?
I can't confirm that from here. I'll refer you to the Greek government for that. Okay. Okay.
Women in combat, the
Yep.
services are going to owe the Secretary a recommendation about whether they're going to ask for any sort of waivers for any jobs.
Mhm.
Do you have a sense of what, first of all, has anybody done that? Have they forwarded their recommendations yet, or do you have a sense of the timetable of when that's going to happen? I know it's due by January, but could it be happening before then?
My understanding, the services need to report by October, and then it's the Secretary will have time up through the end of the year to make a final decision. So that's the timetable as I understand it right now. I can't tell you that anyone's finished their work and submitted that information, but that's the timetable that we're operating under.
Can you share at all the Secretary's thinking about how to proceed with this? And I ask because it seemed like a couple of weeks ago, the Air Force Secretary, Deborah Lee James, was here, and she seemed to indicate that, in the Air Force at least, that they were looking at setting gender-neutral standards that were occupationally appropriate, and then basically setting the standards and then opening all jobs to women. Is that what the Secretary is thinking? Can you share with us at all how he's thinking about this problem?
I think the Secretary, as he's spelled out to you here not too long ago, he wants to hear what the services have to say. He acknowledged the policy change that was put in place under Secretary Panetta, that these positions would be open to women, but would give the services the opportunity to explain why there might need to be exceptions. I think the Secretary is going to give the services the opportunity to explain exactly what, if any, of these positions do need to remain off limits, but he also pointed out that there are more than 100,000 positions that have already been opened to women, and the Secretary supports that and is pleased with that. So he's going to wait to hear what he gets back from the services, and I think to prejudge ahead of that would be probably counterproductive at this point. I got time for 2 more in the back there.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Kurdish sources have told me that the Turks have put a condition on the use of Incirlik, that any U.S. aircraft taken off from there cannot bomb YPG sites or support YPG on the ground. Do you have any information on that?
We appreciate the cooperation we've seen with the Turks in terms of opening up Incirlik to U.S. aircraft. We're working with the Turks on addressing the larger fight against ISIL, and I don't have anything particular on that specifically, but we're continuing to work with the Turks to cooperate more fully, to expand their role in the fight against ISIL, and that's an ongoing effort.
But did they put a condition on the use of Incirlik?
I'm not going to talk about any the terms with which they've agreed to open Incirlik. We appreciate.
What are the terms? What is the agreement with the Turks for the use of Incirlik at this point? Can we bomb any site and support any ground forces on the ground in Syria?
We are coordinating our effort with the Turks and with other members of the coalition and trying to make sure that the use of Incirlik serves the broader effort against ISIL. It's been an important positive step forward. It's made a difference already, and it's going to continue to make a difference. I got time for one last one. Louis.
You spoke earlier about the 4 F-16s and their use by Iraqi Air Forces. What is the plan for the additional 32 F-16s that they have purchased? You know, they've been complaining for the last year or so that delivery has been very slow.
I know that the 4 were delivered in July. We're working with the Iraqis in terms of further deliveries based on the production capacity, some other factors involved here. The next tranche of aircraft, I understand, are going to be delivered to the government of Iraq in the coming months. And again, we're working out the details of that transfer, and we'll have more for you when we can. But at this point, it's 4, and there's, as you are aware, more to come.
On a separate subject, there were 4 U.S. military service members who were injured last week in an attack in the Sinai Peninsula. Can you update us on their condition? And is there an ongoing review by the DoD and the interagency about the status of maintaining the U.S. military presence as part of that observer force in the Sinai?
I don't have the exact characterization of their injuries at this point, whether that, I know that there were, let me double check here, in all there were 7 soldiers, not just U.S. forces, that were evacuated by air to a nearby hospital. They were described in it with non-life-threatening injuries. We continue to support the role being played by the multinational force and observers in supporting the Treaty of Peace between Israel and Egypt. We are concerned over security conditions in that area of the northeastern Sinai, where Egyptian security forces as well as civilian and military elements of the MFO, including U.S. military forces stationed at the MFO North Camp, are exposed to potential risk. And in light of the security situation there, we are, again, considering additional measures to bolster their protection going forward, taking steps to try and enhance their protection. But in terms of any sort of change in outlook for the MFO overall, I've got nothing for you on that.
Would that bolstering involve the sending of additional forces?
We're considering several steps to bolster force protection there, and I can tell you, Louis, that this is something that's been in the works for several weeks now, not necessitated by what happened with this particular IED incident. This is something that's been a concern for the Secretary and others, bolstering force protection, and so it's going to be something that you're going to see some movement on in the short term, and something that we'll continue to keep an eye out. Safety and security of American forces, top priority for this Secretary and this Department. And with that, everyone...
Just clarify one point. Phil's question about the 5,400
Yeah.
trained Syrian rebels by year's end. You said you may have to adjust that. But I'm just wondering...
This is a constant review from the start.
Just doing the math, I'm just wondering how you can possibly reach 5,400 by year's end, given that there's a second class now, maybe a third class, and there's 54 on the ground now. How do you get there by year's end with a 6 to 8 week class?
These are the hard questions being asked, Tom, right now about this program, about ways to alter it, adjust it, enhance it. Are there other means by which we can, again, support moderate Syrian forces on the ground in Syria? These are the questions being asked at the same time this Teenie program is going forward. It may not look exactly as we first hoped when it was first initially unveiled, and part of that is lessons learned on our part, hard lessons, to be honest.
Is sending U.S. troops in one of those options being considered?
Sending U.S. troops in right now is not one of the options being considered.
But you're not ready to adjust that 5,400 figure yet, correct?
I'm not going to adjust what was a target initially. There are people above my pay grade making hard decisions, evaluating this program, and again, when we've got if there's a new target number, we'll provide that for you as well. It was always a target. It was, and this is a program that we'll have. We're going to continue to evaluate every single aspect of this program, from the finances to the training portion of it, to the equipment, and to who we're talking to, who we're vetting, and who we're not. So, with that, everyone, I got to go. I got another meeting. So, thanks very much. We'll see you guys, those of you going on the trip, and otherwise be back here on Thursday.